there's IWD is always terrific, but I think there are reasons to believe that this International Working Women's Day is going to be even on a higher level because to one extent or another, it's going to reflect the actual motion of women of color, low-wage working women of color who are in motion now. And I know that amongst the other things that the revolutionary women who have been meeting on a weekly basis and organizing for this, they're very conscious of that. And so the low-wage worker struggle will be prominent tomorrow. Before I say anything more about the low-wage worker struggle, let me just diverge for just a moment into the Ukraine. We have a comrade, I think many of you know, who, among other things, is a great comrade, young comrade. He also works for Press TV, and sometimes he asks some of us for interviews. And he asked to do an interview with me on the Ukraine. It may have been sent out. I think Sarah sent it. The thing is, I'm not tooting my horn. I'm not saying anything that you all haven't heard or said better. But I would advise you to take a look at it, because if you have not seen the pictures, both stills and moving pictures, of the swastikas, the Confederate flags, and the fascists dressed up in Klan paraphernalia on the steps of the parliament in Kiev, you will see that. And it is shocking and mind-blowing. And I'll tell you, whatever we do, and a lot of things we have to do in relationship to this crisis, but we need to make the bourgeoisie pay for this. They're getting a free ride. They're getting a free ride. They have some explanations. CNN, all of them, the White House, they got some explanations about who they're supporting in this coup. It's just, wow, it's just shocking. I should also add, while I'm talking about young people, the office our office has become, we have noted recently, and this is about our 1 year anniversary, is that right? About our 1 year anniversary, we finally settled down and, got the computers in and got hooked up to the internet and everything. Over the past few months, we have become, once again, a center of movement, working class, anti-imperialist activism. Whether it's the PPA meetings, which are well attended, anywhere from 12 to 30 people, depending on circumstances. The IWD meetings recently, the struggle around the schools, the struggle around the post offices, and last weekend, I don't know if everyone knows this, there was a local Fight Imperialism Stand Together conference right here in this room. And, those of us of another generation, were advised to be sensitive, and not overwhelm the meeting. And so we kind of tiptoed, to take a peek at it. And, lo and behold, we came in here and all these seats that you have now, and even more the seats, were filled with beautiful young people of all nationalities. And it was tremendous. It was just tremendous. And it was a very high-level program. Very high-level program, ideologically, and in terms of what they were doing. There's some great speeches. I won't give you my favorites, but I think they've been put out, so you might be able to get them for the comments who have put them out. I mean, something's happening here. There's a buzz, I now want to talk about where the low-wage worker struggles at. We've been talking about this in the party for quite some time. Frankly, trying to get on the same page because it's new and it's incipient. And there are different points of view on it, I think. Some think it's great, some are not sure, some it may not even be on the radar screen. from my observation inside organized labor, there's been a change in recent months where a lot of trade unionists, even radical trade unionists, our friends, they didn't know what to make of it. McDonald's, Wendy's, Walmart's, you can't organize these places. It's not realistic. You're going to get a contract, sit down with a boss, negotiate. They didn't see it, and they were mostly focused on, understandably so, the offensive against organized labor. What's happening in Boston, making Michigan a so-called right-to-work state, and these kind of things. A defensive mode against austerity and union busting. And so what's going on with fast food workers and workers at the airports and workers in retail and some other workers, but that's beginning to change. In my own opinion, it can't change fast enough. They're beginning to see that, wait a second, this is something. It's not only something here, it's something international. Yes, it is at its beginning stages. And yes, it is true that organized labor is not doing enough about it. In some ways, it's reminiscent of some initial good words coming from organized labor in support of the migrant workers' struggle and their tremendous rebellion in 2006. But then they backed off. They didn't see the opportunity that supporting these migrant workers not only an act of charity, it could drag other sections of the working class into a revolutionary 21st century class struggle, anti-capitalist, mode. Well, the pressures are forcing the unions to see it. A few weeks ago, the Comrades in Baltimore organized a regional workers' assembly. Its attendance was fair, about the same as the one they had on Labor Day last year. It was somewhat affected by the weather, but you had a fair number of representatives of low-wage worker organizing campaigns, both in fast food, in retail, at the airport. You had representatives of the Southern Workers Assembly. And I should add, while the Southern Workers Assembly, which is expanding, having local workers' assemblies in Charleston, in Raleigh, and Durham, and our comrades are very much involved in it. Our comrades are actually chairing some of these meetings. They are now adding to their primary focus, which is public workers who have no right to organize, and a lot of their activity is literally illegal, but yet they have a structure. They're now adding low-wage workers. One of the things that we did at that meeting, I'm not going to go into it, Comrade Sharon Blackwater report, was a short report, but it'll suffice for now, was coming up with a May Day declaration in solidarity with low-wage workers. So a few of us got together and drafted something. And I beg your pardon, I'm not good at reading things, which is why I don't often do it. But I want to read this draft statement, this draft declaration of support for low-wage workers. With this proviso, it is a draft. It needs to be worked on. Even leading comrades in our own party, particularly women comrades and comrades in the leadership of the immigrant workers' struggle, have not been able to weigh in. And so even the party has to review it more. We haven't released it after 2 weeks because we want to make sure. So this is, some people know about it, but mostly it's internal. Also, we're still figuring out the timing of it. Some of the timing was predicated on the fact that, at least up until recently, the Service Employees International Union was actually thinking about holding another fast food workers' strike on May Day. And we were very excited about that. But it seems like that's not going to happen, and I'll get back to that. But let me just, I think the statement gives you the idea of where, it's either where this is going, or It's where some of us want it to go. This is a May Day call for solidarity movement with low-wage workers, with the low-wage worker uprising, with a 10-point program of direction. The movement of low-wage workers is not just about raising the minimum wage, as critically necessary as that is. The low-wage worker movement that has developed over the past 2 years with strikes and protests that have captured the imagination of workers everywhere, as well as the weary attention of the 1%, is nothing less than the very beginning of a global uprising of low-wage workers. This uprising has been in the making for a long time. It is the inevitable reaction to the capitalist systems destroying union jobs and creating poverty wage jobs and mass unemployment. Although the low-wage worker uprisings have been relatively small in this early phase, they hold the potential to revive the global working class movement and the struggle for a new world based on social justice. As progressives, activists, radicals, or however else we characterize ourselves, we understand that the only way that this uprising of low-wage workers, the only way that they can realize its true potential, is for us and millions more like us to ensure that these brave workers are not isolated. History demands that we forge the widest solidarity movement with this struggle. We refuse to stand by and leave it to these workers to battle their greedy bosses alone. We must create a way for everyone who supports this uprising to contribute to it. 1, we call for the establishment of low-wage worker solidarity network and the convening of low-wage worker solidarity assemblies for the purpose of furthering this work. And while low-wage workers will be a special focus of our work, we will do solidarity with all workers' struggles and around all issues of concern to poor and working people. 2, this solidarity movement will work with anyone who will help the low-wage workers movement in an open and friendly and non-sectarian manner. But this movement must remain independent of the control of politicians and political parties that are part of the system, because they are forces that will limit, tame, and otherwise render the movement subservient to the system if they control it. 3, target the 1%. It is true that only a fraction of the millions of low-wage workers are in motion as of yet. However, the strikes for $15 an hour minimum wage in a union have created an undeniable and powerful low-wage pro-worker atmosphere that has put Wall Street and the 1% on the defensive, while empowering more low-wage workers. In addition to concretely aiding organizing campaigns in the workplace, a low-wage worker solidarity movement can help to maintain and strengthen the pro-worker atmosphere by targeting the offices and meetings of low-wage employers and their lobbies. Organized labor must get serious about low-wage workers. All this is important, but I thought this one was very important. We urge organized labor to prioritize and put far more resources into organizing low-wage workers. The best way for organized labor to defend itself against Wall Street's war against workers is to fully embrace the struggle of low-wage workers in whatever area they work: restaurants, retail stores, hotels, airports, laundromats, car washes, day laborers, domestic work, healthcare, maintenance, transportation, manufacturing, government workers. Yes, many government workers make minimum wage, and so on, and in all industries, private and public. This means organizing the whole working class, because today most workers are low-wage workers. Moreover, the struggle against union busting, wage cuts, austerity, privatization, the closing of schools, post offices, hospitals, must no longer be seen as separate and apart from from the low-wage worker movement, but rather intrinsically connected. Disunited, all workers will lose. United, we will win. 5, we believe that the demand for a minimum wage of at least $15 an hour is indeed a minimum demand. Workers need and should rightly demand much more than this. While any increase in wages is welcome, we believe that the proposals to raise the minimum to 9 or 10 or 10.10 an hour are in part designed to take the steam out of this uprising of low-wage workers. We must not allow this to happen. Organization, this is number 6, organization and unionization is the goal. Low-wage workers need more than a raise. They need the right to be able to determine decent working conditions and benefits. They need the right to organize and have a union. Low-wage workers are organizing as courageously as they can, given their circumstances. The various campaigns and organizations that low-wage workers have formed may not, at this point, resemble traditional unions. And yes, these workers have no contracts, and the bosses have not been forced to recognize and listen to these workers yet. But that doesn't mean that these workers and their organizations should be viewed as any less important than traditional unions. 7, we reject the idea that raising workers' wages and demanding the right to organize will mean fewer jobs. This idea is not a genuine economic argument. It is a social and political argument that serves the 1%. The premise of this argument is that for a worker to get a little justice, rich people must make enormous profits. This is an argument workers never win. This is an argument that serves the profits before people capitalist system. And this is why the thinking of this new movement must be decidedly anti-capitalist. 8, we believe that everyone has the right to a job with a living wage, and that this right is far more important than anyone's right to be a billionaire and exploit workers. And we know that the next major task of this movement is to help organize the growing numbers of unemployed and underemployed people in their struggle for jobs with a livable wage or an income. 9, we believe that the workers' movement must be anti-racist and not narrowly exclusive or timid. This movement must militantly embrace all poor and working people, especially women, especially migrant workers, the homeless, the poor, LGBTQ people, and people with disabilities, and especially black and brown youth, indigenous people, and black and brown youth, whom this system is waging a vicious racist war against. And finally, the worker solidarity movement must be global and anti-imperialist. We must support workers everywhere and communicate and consult with workers on an international basis so that our movement and our actions are more and more global. Comrades, we think it's not a perfect document. It can definitely be helped. Some of you may have good ideas, but what we're trying to do is lay out a new politics. That there's a basis for creating a political solidarity movement with these low-wage workers. That at the very least will pull more people into worker solidarity work, regardless of their circumstances, whether they're retired, whether they have a job, whether they have a job that's relatively more privileged, whether they're in a union, whatever their circumstances are, whatever their generation is. These low-wage workers need us in the street. See? This informs everything that we're doing. It informs tomorrow's demonstration. It informs the demonstration that we're having a week from tomorrow. A number of organizations, including the People's Power Assembly, have called for a march for 15 an hour on March 15th. Sort of a play on it, you know. And we're going back to 34th Street. Why are we going back to 34th Street at 1 o'clock? before the wonderful memorial for Comrade Milton Theyre, and I think we're going to dedicate the demonstration to Milton Theyre, who was a militant for workers. You know, why are we going back there? Because there are tens of thousands of low-wage workers working in every possible industry, mostly retail and restaurants. And let me tell you, when they see us, they smile. Their face brightens up. They get a glimmer in their eye. This is what we saw on October 24th. When we went into the stores and did our little, what do we call them, flash mobs. We'll be doing some of that tomorrow, you know. This is why a lot of people are talking about how can we make May Day, both in New York, but everywhere that we're able, more focused on supporting low-wage workers and helping this movement. Actually, another thing that came out of Baltimore, and I hope they're able to do it. It's challenging, especially because it's so close to May Day, but I think you'll agree with me that it's worthwhile. One of the biggest bourgeois lobbies that is fighting raising the minimum wage is the National Restaurant Association. They come to Washington, they go to state capitals with bags of money, you know, fighting to make sure that workers don't get a penny, but that they lose money. And they also fight on things like sick pay. They fight on things like union rights. They fight, they exist to fight workers. They're having a conference on April 29th, 2 days before May Day, in Washington, D.C. Because of Baltimore's proximity to Washington, you know, unlike us, it's about 50 minutes. You know, we have to go 3-4 hours. You know, we may send a car to, well, we'll see. They want to target this National Restaurant Association's conference. Why are they having the conference then? They're having the conference then because Congress is holding hearings on raising the minimum wage, and they work together. You know, so that they had their conference when Congress is taking out, and they want to send their CEOs, you know, up there. They like to, if you look at their webpage, they like to portray that they're just representing mom and pop, you know, restaurants, but they represent all the big chains: Wendy's, McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, Subways, Darden's. You know, they don't even pay. If you work for tips, you get $3 if you're lucky. Also, another big issue. And our immigrant sisters and brothers have brought this to our attention. But even the unions are beginning to deal with it. This is stuff I've read. Not only people making, you know, ridiculous minimum wages, but wage theft. That is when you work and the boss, I didn't see your card. I don't know what happened. That you claim that, but we, you know, but you forced me to work 12 hours. You forced me to work a double shift. Well, that's not, no, you know. And for weeks and months, workers don't get paid. Sometimes they get fired for organizing, and they're owed months and months and months of pay. You know, so that's a big issue that's growing in this. I think that's basically it. I mean, I want to go back to what I said about the unions when they were looking to May Day as a day for a fast food job action, which just, wow. We were so excited by that. They claim that the reason that they're not doing it is because, if you believe it, I don't know whether to believe it, maybe it's true, kind of fantastic, that they were trying to get unions around the world to do it too. And that those unions were tied up in the traditional May Day events that they usually are tied up in. Something sounds not right about that, but wow. It seems as though they have moved the next strike to May 15th. So in addition to May Day being what it's going to be, and by the way, there was a smoking first May Day meeting, you know, at the TW, at Local 100, about 2 weeks ago. well represented, and they're planning stuff that in terms of the march will deal with low-wage workers, deal with the fast food chains, at the appropriate time, Comrades who are on top of that will report that out to you. And by the way, the next May Day meeting, I think, is Wednesday, at that nice church that we had the event for Lynn Stewart, 54th Street and, St. Peter's Church, Anyway, just to bear in mind, that this is what we're thinking about, comrades. And I know we have that important tomorrow we have an important demonstration that I just heard about on Friday, which we'll all be there. U.S. hands off the Ukraine, get the hell out of everything. Tie it with Venezuela is very important. We need an update on that. But before Milton's memorial, try to come to this demonstration on 34th Street. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. One of the things that the PPA has been doing more often is that we're working with these low-wage worker campaigns. Some it's more difficult because it's more bureaucratic and hierarchical, but some it's like just the workers just love us. Like, for example, the Laundry Workers Center. We send people up, and not just comrades, people who are just, rank and file members of PPA who used to be in, OWS. We send them up there Monday night, fighting for Marima, who was fired, abused, and also was a victim of wage theft, to demonstrate in front of this bakery. And boy, do we get a tremendous response. And now they come to our meetings and they treat us as comrades, It's been so wonderful to see that solidarity grow. More to come. On the women question, what we have found, and it's no surprise, that while a lot of to the extent that a few unions have put some resources into new low-wage worker organizing, like fast food, like retail, like some of the workers at the airport. Airport's a little bit of an exception. Primarily, the organizers are men. Quite a few young white men, but the organizers in the workplace who come front and center, who become the leaders at the workplace, almost always women. I don't know. I think there's a little struggle in some of the union about figuring that out and fixing it, and hiring more women organizers, more oppressed women organizers, instead of recent young graduates, Nothing against them. I mean, and sometimes, hopefully sometimes these guys learn how to support instead of just, pull some chauvinist thing, support these women. It's actually a challenge for them. How do they do it? It goes both ways, But tomorrow's event tends to strengthen the necessity of leadership of women, because this is the direction that it's going in. That's just it, exception here, exception that. Also, something for comrades to realize, so they don't just, oh well, this is good, but it's an anomaly, and trying to wrap your head around the dynamic behind this low-wage worker movement. There's a social and political dialectic that's happening. What is that? And you're finally seeing it now. It's probably just the early stages, but when it gets deeper, wow. The pauperization of the working class has reached a point where, as distinct from another time, maybe not too long ago, certainly a generation ago, see, there's so many low-wage workers. And now their issue's big. Even the bourgeois politicians have to speak to it. The president just gave a press conference or a speech about it yesterday with the whole 10-10 thing. And they're so omnipresent. They're not necessarily in big factories that you have to drive your car to. They're everywhere. They're in commercial areas. They're in communities. They're in business areas. They're in shopping areas. You fall over fast food restaurants. You fall over retail stores that have anywhere from a handful to as much as 20 workers. And for the big ones, even more than that. You're tripping over them on your way to the subway, on your way home. So what does that mean? And they're thinking now. And there's been, actually McDonald's gave I don't know the reason why they did it. Maybe to get a tax break or something like that. But they made a report to the SEC recently where they said that the chances that they're going to have to, on a widespread basis, whether this was bullshit, propaganda bullshit, I don't know, but it's interesting. The chances that they're going to have to increase their wages are about 99%. Because they can't take it. There's just too much pressure. They've been demonized and vilified, and everybody's beaten up on them, and their workforces are not loyal. They have to pay more attention, And the managers are all stressed out. They don't know who's going to go on strike, and oh my goodness, and they're on the phone with some office, like the demonstrators in here. They don't know who to trust. Now maybe they're hyping this up for some reason, but there's something to it. There's something to it. The Gap said, "The hell with it. We're raising our pay to $10. Leave us alone. We're going to pay $10 an hour. They think that's going to let them off the hook." But they've been demonized, and think about it. This is just the beginning. This is on the basis of thousands of workers, not millions of workers, but thousands of workers being in motion. But just to get back to the dialectical point, pauperization, concentration of low-wage workers, and consciousness, and add the catalyst of some motion, some struggle. It's created a situation where you can get a placard that calls for raising the minimum wage and says support low-wage worker, and you'll walk down the street and you'll get applause. Whereas there might have been a time where, whatever, another crackpot selling something, that has nothing to do with me, the alienation and atomization that people usually feel. It's changed now. If you have 6 people walking down the street with placards, 3 people join you. You go into a low-wage employer, and they smile. And this is just the beginning. You say, how do we get in? Do we organize workers? We do what we can. But this is what the unions are not putting enough into it. In a way, that creates an opening for us, ironically, because they're not putting enough in. Hopefully that will change. They're not putting enough into it. So volunteer, organizers on a revolutionary basis is what they needed, But what the unions don't want to do, and what we'll have to fight with them to do, the best elements, they don't see the necessity and the relative ease of building a serious solidarity movement with these low-wage workers that would help the job 100-fold, and that would ensure that they're not isolated. And that is where we have an in. It's not the only place, but it's where we have an in. And here and in other places, we're strategizing and trying to figure out how to do it. And we're winning people around us on that basis.